I think iRacing is kind of a bit like Apple.
Hey guys, and welcome to Nitro Nights. As yes, I'm a new face around here. My name's Tyler Gough, also known as Feelin. I'll be the host for the show today. Believe me when I say it's going to be a banger. As of course, before we bring in Chris Haye to hear from him what to focus your money on and to compare to what random Callsign thinks, let's check on what you need that can turn sim racing into a money pit.
Rigs, wheels, pedals. Getting the right equipment for sim racing is definitely expensive. Not only do you need a lot of hardware and games, but even the right shoes and socks. The latter, of course, aren't the most important thing, but they show the trend towards it being a pretty expensive hobby. Of course, you can get a solid, fairly cheap entry into the sim racing world with a Logitech G29, for example. And that's not the only cheaper option. As we covered last time, the Fanatec CSL-DD could be a great step in the right direction for the future. But still, combine this with some nice pedals and maybe even a rig, and you're quickly over $1,000. If you want to dive even deeper, you can invest in sim racing shoes, as well as socks, gloves, and many other accessories. These aren't strictly necessary, but may enhance your experience and increase the immersion to make you feel like you're sitting in a real car. But it's not only the right gear that costs a small fortune. To even just get started in the sim racing world, you have to consider the games themselves. While you can get a great game like Assetto Corsa Competizione for around $40, for the full experience you still have to calculate in all the DLC for an additional $50. And if this isn't enough for you, there's still the ever-looming giant called iRacing. Here, you need a monthly subscription to drive at all. This includes 16 cars and 22 tracks. Every extra track and car costs you up to $15 on top. And those are dearly needed if you want to race in different championships and experience the game to its fullest. All in all, there's many expensive aspects to consider in sim racing. Where to start and which gear and game is right for you is always the toughest question.
So now that we went over on how expensive the sim racing world can be, let's bring on Chris Haye to find out from our expert on what you guys should spend your money on and where it's good to cut corners. Hi, Chris. How you doing?
Hi, yeah, I'm here. Thank you so much for having me back again after last time, where I probably spoke for so long that your editor, I imagine, quit. So yeah, thank you for having me back.
Yeah, we'll try to do the same today, and we'll get you started straight off with giving you a imaginative budget of 500 euros. You already have a PC, you already have a monitor to work with. You do need a game, and you do need a rig, a wheel. What are you getting?
Right. Well, it's a big question, and there's a lot to consider. I'm personally of the opinion that the rig and the wheel, when you're first getting into it, are both kind of equally important, but potentially as you upgrade further, the differences become more important. But realistically, if you're going to start in sim racing and you've got a budget of, say, 500 euros, as you've posited here, I would suggest that for the sim, you're going to go for something at the slightly cheaper end of the market that doesn't involve a long-term subscription cost or kind of having to buy additional content for it. So something like R Factor 2 or Assetto Corsa or Race Room or something like that. Race Room does have additional content you can buy, but it's not quite at the same level as something like iRacing. Say we've spent something like, I don't know, 50 euros there. That leaves us 450 for the rig. Now, if we're talking PC, then you are likely to be able to strap your wheel and your pedals to your desk, and that can save you some money. So realistically, 450 euros is a pretty healthy budget, but I, for one, would always be looking, if you're starting out in any hobby, to go in secondhand. 450 euros secondhand can get you quite a lot. Something like a used Club Sport V2.5 and a set of pedals with it would be really good. Or from Thrustmaster, something like a TSPC Racer. And you get so much more for your money than maybe buying something new. And if it's a new hobby, you don't know you're necessarily going to gel with it, whether you're going to stick with it. Because honestly, if you do, it's the kind of hobby that ends up costing more and more. The more you get into it, the more you want to spend, the more you want to upgrade things. Particularly if you're like me and gear is just a a religion rather than a means to an end.
Yes, I think a lot of people always say, well, okay, we'll just go for something classic like the Logitech or Thrustmaster product as well. So would you actually then say, okay, try something secondhand, especially also if you can test it? Or would you say, okay, well, just try, maybe even give it a risk or two and go in blind?
Yeah, I mean, that's a risk with anything in secondhand, of course. I'm a big fan of particularly the Logitech G29 as a real starter wheel. Like for Black Friday deals in the UK last year, I think you were able to get it for about £130. It's about €150, which is such a great deal. And it comes with the pedals as well for that price. So yeah, I mean, if you're very constricted on budget, then I always think that or the Thrustmaster T150 are a really great way to get into it. But if you do have that €500 that you sort of posited there, then I would put the money into the hardware and try and go for something secondhand. You might even be starting to scrape into the low end of direct drive territory there as well on the secondhand market, although you pretty close.
Yeah, of course, talking about direct drive as well, we, of course, had our last episode about the CSL-DD, and that's going to be coming out soon. What are your opinions on that? Do you think that's going to be a big game changer? Is that the future of where entry-level sim racing could also go?
Yes, I think entry level is an interesting term there, because if you think about it, the base level model is €350. You have to buy a wheel rim on top of that, which is probably a couple of €100 more, and then you have to buy pedals on top of that. So that wouldn't quite fit into that, that hypothetical €500 budget we just talked about. But for people that are absolutely convinced that sim racing is the thing they want to do, or people that are graduating from maybe playing on a pad for a little while and are happy to go and just spend that little bit more than that hypothetical budget, what's potentially on offer there is massive compared to some of the other entry-level wheels we've been talking about. So yeah, in short.
Now, we also asked our own community via social media platforms on what they think is the most integral part. Is it the wheel? Is it the pedals? And we also asked Random Callsign on his opinion on that, and we'll take a look at that now.
I would always say that if you're going into sim racing, buy the cheapest force feedback wheel that you can get that is somewhat decent and reputable. So a Logitech G wheel or something like a Thrustmaster T300 or T150 would be good. Pedals will be the first thing to upgrade, and then you move from there.
Basically, he was always the opinion that also the pedals are sometimes also just cheating, and it can make it so much more easier. What do you have to say to that?
Yeah, I'm going to be really controversial and 100% agree with everything Random Callsign said there. He's right. Force feedback feels good. It's really important for the immersion side of things. And if you want to really get into it and enjoy the experience, force feedback's amazing. So getting a high-end direct drive wheel does feel better, but doesn't necessarily make you any quicker. Whereas upgrading pedals, like the first step from like a normal Hall effect or potentiometer pedal to a load cell, which actually measures the force you're applying into the pedal rather than the sort of angular movement of the pedal up and down, well, that makes a big difference in both your feel and the ability to actually be able to modulate the brakes correctly, to find that braking limit properly right at the point where the car's going to lock up. And really critically, and this is personal opinion rather than fact, for me, it's about the feel coming off the pedal as you're trail braking deep into the corner. I've been using a set of pedals this week that don't have a load cell for the first time in a while, and it's taken a long time for me to adjust. Getting the braking point right has been fairly easy. That came fairly quickly, but how you trail off coming into the corner, that muscle memory takes a lot longer to build. So yeah, Random Callsign's absolutely right.
Yeah, and actually also when talking about applying force to the pedals, there's always the age-old question, are you going to wear socks? Are you going to get racing shoes? Are you going to get racing socks? Are you barefoot? Where do you stand on that?
I mean, it's one of those personal preference things, isn't it, really? But I've always been a shoes guy. I have a set of racing boots, which I tend to use when I'm filming because it just looks better than whatever shoes I've been wearing that day in the street. It means I don't have to worry about making sure like my trainers are perfectly beautifully white or whatever before I put the camera on them. But like from a performance perspective, there is a point, particularly when you get into higher end gear, where socks become problematic. Like as you get into those really heavy load cell pedals, like a high-end set of Huisingvelds or something like that, or I've got a set of OBP pedals that are hydraulic, and you can crank the pedal force up easily past 100 kilograms. And yeah, I don't know, metal pedal plate into my foot with 100 kilos of force just doesn't sound that fun to me.
All right, so let's talk games. And of course, there's plenty of options when it comes down to the games and sims that are available. We also asked Random Callsign on his opinion when it comes down to what or where to put your money when it comes down to sims. And let's have a look at that.
iRacing is not just a game, it's a full commitment. It's a monetary commitment that other sims don't have. It has a better structured multiplayer. It has a very persistent game world. It has a very persistent rating. And it's more of a community in the game. And with different things to do, and you carry over, safety rating. It really depends on what you're trying to achieve in sim racing and what you're trying to do.
So yeah, we already touched a little bit on that point as well. Do you agree to start with iRacing? Of course, earlier it sounded more like you should start with another sim.
I think iRacing is kind of a bit like Apple in a way, in the sense that when you buy into it, you're buying into the ecosystem rather than just necessarily the game. You're committing, as Random Callsign said, you're committing to being part of that community, and you're committing to being all in on iRacing. And you do find there are sim racers that literally just, I only race iRacing, because it does have that great structured multiplayer community. It's got daily races in all kinds of cars. And, it provides a certain type of racing to someone that just wants to be consistently in competitive online races that just none of the other sims really touch on. ACC's been getting there recently with its online scheduled races every evening, and Race Room's got its own ranked multiplayer stuff now as well. So the other sims are playing catch up in that regard, and iRacing is kind of the big guy in that pond. So yeah, realistically, if that's what you want, if what you want is to get in a car and race against other human beings every night of the week or 3 nights a week or whatever it is, and you're happy to pay the cost of entry, then there's just nothing like iRacing out there for it. Whereas on the flip side, if you're just dipping your toe, then I think any of the other sims is just a better place to start. You'll learn the car control, you'll learn the nuances with the equipment and all of the setup stuff, because sim racing has a fairly steep entry curve, a fairly steep learning curve, I should say, across almost every aspect of it. And iRacing, being competitive and you're fighting against people, learning what you're doing in that environment can be tough. It's not for everyone.
Thanks a million for taking the time to be here for the show today. It's been great to have you on, been great to get your point of view as well. And yeah, with that, last couple of words are yours to plug what you have coming up.
Oh, well, if we're doing plugs, I should mention that Friday at 10 a.m. UK time, which I think is 9 in Europe, I'm releasing my preview videos of the Fanatec CSL direct drive wheel and the new CSL pedals, which have caused a bit of a stir in the market. That's when the embargo breaks, and I'll be able to show you guys whether they're any good or not.
All right. So with that, of course, thanks for taking the time, and hopefully see you soon.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
That wraps up today's Nitro Nights show. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any feedback, just let us know in the comments below. As always, check out overtake.gg to stay up to date for the newest hard releases and reviews. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Until then, stay safe and buckle up. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. If you missed the last one, you can watch it right here. We had a chat with Gamer Muscle about the Fanatec CSL DD and if it's the future of sim racing, or just check out our iRacing Oval Beginner Guide to get out of rookie fast.